Welcome everyone to our third installment of our Help Them Home Zoomcast. We have on the call today Larry Haynes, our Chief Executive Officer. We have Kyle Payne, who is with Community Development Partners, and we also have Nguyen from Wells Fargo. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. I want to give a quick rundown of what to expect in the next hour here, just so you all kind of know where we're going with this. First off, I'm going to do a quick introduction for everyone, and then we're going to go into this conversation that we have about partnerships and how Mercy House partners with a couple different, really a lot of different types of businesses, churches, banks, pretty much everyone you can think of. But today we're really going to highlight these two partnerships that we have. And then we're going to go into a Q&A time. So if you have any questions as we're talking, if anything prompts you to say, oh, I want to know more about that, please feel free to direct message our host, the Mercy House link in the chat, and you can be able to send your questions in to us. And given how much time we have left, we'll be able to hopefully get through all of them, or as many as we can. And then lastly, I'm going to take the last very short portion, I promise you, of this to actually talk about what Help Them Home is. It's a bigger campaign that we're doing with 19 other nonprofits, and I just want to share a little bit of that at the very end. So, so I think you saw in the chat, please send your message or send your questions there as they come up. So. All right, well, I guess I can get this started now. So what I'll do is, Larry, if you can just kind of very briefly introduce yourself and what you do at Mercy House.
Sure, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to be a part of this Zoomcast. We really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here with our partners, Kyle Payne from CDP and Nguyen, who, in addition to being our board, is with Wells Fargo. And I'm really excited to talk about partnerships and how we move forward with those this morning. My name is Larry Haynes, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Mercy House. And it's been my privilege to have been with Mercy House since the very beginning. So going on 31 years in a couple of weeks.
Awesome, thank you, Larry. So now I'll kick it over to Kyle. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Hi, everybody. Nice to see some of you, and glad to be on this with Mercy House. Jacob, thanks for setting us up and inviting us. So I'm Kyle Payne. I'm president of Community Development Partners. We're an affordable housing development company based here in Newport Beach with offices up in Portland. We develop affordable housing. So we develop it, own it, operate it with partners like Mercy House, and cover the gamut of different population types, from seniors to family housing to special needs populations, homeless, those with severe mental illness, everything kind of across the board, and cover 4 different states where we work in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. Long-term owners of affordable housing, and companies run by my brother and I, Eric, who's on here as CDP Portland. So notice the resemblance. It's not a coincidence. We are brothers. And he's the CEO and is up in our Portland office. And so from those two positions, we try to, address homelessness, housing issues across the different localities we work in. So very nice to meet everybody.
Awesome, thank you, Kyle. And then Linda, if you could just introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and thank you to Mercy House for hosting this and for all of you for joining us. My name is Nguyen, and I'm with Wells Fargo Foundation, where our philanthropy focuses on housing affordability, small business development, financial health, and sustainability. So a lot of the work that Mercy House is doing with many of their partners really align with our philanthropy and really the mission of our company, in which the way we want to have an impact on our communities.
Awesome, thank you. So I see Larry's taking a sip of coffee, but I am going to direct my first question to him. Larry, could you talk to us a little bit about what Mercy House is? Obviously, our goal is to end homelessness. We get that, but talk to us a little bit about how we want to achieve that, and maybe really hit along the lines of developing housing. Could you just talk to us a little bit about Mercy House's goal of that, very generally?
Sure. I mean, we at Mercy House believe the following. We believe that everyone deserves to have access to housing. Everyone. That it's not something that's earned. It's not something that's, simply a reward for being good, but it is something that is intrinsic to being fully human. And so our goal in every case, everybody that we work with, is to in fact get them into permanent housing and to do everything that we can to sustain them once they're there. You know, we at Mercy House, we work with a wide variety of folks, the entire spectrum. Those who maybe have just who are working and have just maybe hit a simple financial hardship and need just a little bit of help, all the way down to the other end of the scale of those that are the most vulnerable, folks who continue to struggle with drug addictions, folks with multiple disabilities, folks that without our help, candidly, would simply die on the streets, and everyone in between. And so this is why what is central to everything that we do at Mercy House is focused on getting people into permanent housing. And you know, one of the reasons, and I'll end with this, one of the reasons that we got involved in these partnerships, like with CDP and so forth, in developing our housing is, you know, sometimes you're told to stay in your lane, right? We do three things at Mercy House that are kind of our trademark programs. We have street outreach teams. We're very well known for operating several large-scale emergency shelters and navigation centers. But also the thing that we do most of is permanent housing. And the reason we do that is years ago, we were unable to actually get people placed into housing by the other housing developers out there, right? And so after years and years of trying, we decided, well, we need to be a part of this process ourselves. And that's why we developed these partnerships. And probably by far our most fruitful one has been with CDP.
Awesome, thank you, Larry. So kind of in the theme of permanent housing, Linda, could you talk to us a little bit about how your work with Wells Fargo has helped support permanent housing, either through grants or through other ways of support, and then also even maybe even mention the project that we did in collaboration with UCI and how that kind of fits into this bigger picture.
So, you know, as I mentioned, the commitment that Wells Fargo has to housing affordability is significant. A couple of years ago, we made the big announcement of the $1 billion commitment to that. And so it comes in a multitude of ways. We have our philanthropy that does things from the top of the house with competitive grant programs, looking at different types of loans that we can do, but also looking at the issue of housing and homelessness from a local level or a local perspective. As you know, the issue, while it is something that is nationwide, its manifestation and the way it's shown and some of the challenges will vary from region to region. And so in exploring that, we look at, you know, what are the things that are impacting, let's say, Orange County in developing housing. So one of the big areas was exploring this concept of looking at what are some existing policies or the uses of land that have existed for decades, but how can they be challenged or assessed or examined in a different way to build out that notion of what Larry mentioned around partnership. And so one of the things that we embarked on is the partnership with UCI in developing a report around working with faith-based organizations to develop housing. And a couple of reasons that really abounded. First, there was the state legislation that was happening. We were seeing if there was some way that we can leverage that or use that to advocate for an expeditious process to convert some of the spaces that faith-based organizations have for zoning so that it could move along faster. The other piece is the funding piece. And there are requirements around that funding component and the eligibility. And while that piece of legislation didn't fully go through, we still wanted to follow through with our commitment and looking at how can we still use that and leverage it as a demonstration of still, how can it be done locally? So the report embarked on the question of why engage with faith-based organizations? What is the significance of it? And one of the key things that came from that was really looking at the purpose and mission alignment of that. For many of us, our faiths play a big part of who we are and guide our values and inform us about how we want to contribute to our communities in what ways we can. So right there were those synergies, and I think the report underscores that as well. And then the other part is more on a looking at it from a planning perspective, looking at working with cities and providing them with this resource to say, yes, while there are challenges to it, it's not insurmountable. So what Mercy House has embarked on in terms of this faith-based effort is demonstrative of a certain level of creativity, innovation, and really staying committed to that effort to getting it done. And that one of them is in our region, which is in Orange County in Santa Ana with the Legacy Project. So that's how we're involved, and we're really supportive of that. And we hope to continue to be engaged in that space, to facilitate the dialogue, the conversation, to see how we can help move the different elements and aspects of housing affordability along along that continuum of services to support addressing the issue of housing and homelessness.
Awesome, thank you, Linda. It's so, I feel like it's so, bigger picture, but it also still tangibly touches, how individuals are being affected and having better access to affordable housing at the individual level. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I kind of want to go to Kyle. Kyle, can you talk a little bit about your role in housing development, and then I guess how you collaborate with Mercy House as well?
Yeah, sure, happy to. Developers, it just seems like a broad term sometimes if you're not in the industry, and it really, the role is really like knowing a little about a lot of things, and then finding good partners to work on, right? So we put together projects, we find the land, we work with brokers to do so, we try to tie that land up, we try to entitle that land, often working with consultants, and then we work on the financing. We try to secure financing to build new affordable housing. We also do acquisition rehab projects. We've converted motels, so adaptive reuse. Basically, we're trying to create the housing. The housing is kind of the bottom, the fundamental goal of what we're trying to do, but it's what we strive for at CDP is way more than that. We're trying to build communities. And so, and make sure that the people who live and who have the opportunity to live in those, access those housing units, really thrive in them. And to do that, you need a lot of other components, not just the brick and mortar of building housing, but you need services, you need property management, you need support, you need rental assistance, you need food, you need amenities, so that people can live full lives and rich lives in the community that you're creating. And so, aside from partnering with architects, contractors who actually build the project, construction managers, working with cities to get different financing sources and make sure that we're meeting the need that the city has in developing what type of affordable housing we're going to do. On top of that, we need to find a partner who understands the population and can provide supportive wraparound services to our residents. And that's really where the partnership with Mercy House developed. Prior to meeting Mercy House, CDP had not done any permanent supportive housing for those who have special needs populations, homeless, who really need more intensive case management wraparound services. And so when we met Mercy House, and I think we really aligned well with Larry and with Linda over there, Linda Wilson, we just felt like the two companies had the same kind of vision of like, hey, housing, it's more than just housing, right? This is communities, and we need support, and we need to help these populations not just find a place to live, but also access healthcare, access food, find ways to get jobs, like just every component to it. And Mercy House really had their finger on that. They understand the population so well. So for us, it seemed a daunting task to jump into the permanent supportive housing role, not just affordable housing, with working families, but those who are really intensive case management needs. And Mercy House really, that's what they had been doing for their 30-year, existence. And so partnering with them, both from a local standpoint, we're both in Southern California, we were working on a project in Santa Ana, they're in Santa Ana. It just made a lot of sense. And we've just meshed really well with Mercy House. And that's how we've kind of developed ongoing partnerships with them on other projects. And so we really are kind of putting the deals together, getting them built and getting the financing in. Mercy House is really supporting the longevity of the project and making sure that residents are supported, they maintain housing, and they stay in housing. And that really starts from all the way at the very beginning of lease up, finding tenants and working with outreach folks who are working with those who are on the streets, to getting applied and going through the application process, getting approved, into the back end of supporting those residents and making sure that they have what they need to stay housed and maintain housing. So that's really where the partnership comes in. But it's developed, honestly, with Mercy House. I mean, they are a co-developer with us, really. I mean, we are working on deals from the front end, both from the lobbying side of getting support from different community groups to, getting political support at the city council level. We're working hand in hand with Mercy House on that. And so I think the relationship where it started as like a service provider versus and developer role, and then morphed into also our nonprofit partner. Now it's really like we are co-developing. We were working on projects from the start of like, maybe this is a site we could work on, to the end of like, now we're up and operating these deals. And so I think it's hard to delineate, I guess, the roles, but really we're working hand in hand with Mercy House on multiple projects and thinking about the back end of how to make this project, develop the project in a way that's going to be supportive of the residents and ensure, their long-term success. So I think that's kind of a summary of the partnership with Mercy House and what our role is and theirs, but it is very blended. We are working on multiple aspects together, including funding and financing and, trying to find the right consultants. So
for all we've been through, I'm just glad you and Eric are still talking to me. That's, when it's all said and so grateful for you guys.
Well, your mom's on here, so I'm just trying to be nice, Trying to be nice.
Well, Larry, I couldn't help but notice. I mean, I know personally, I know that this stuff really excites you, and I can't help but see you really get really engaged. So, can you talk to us a little about what you find to be some of the most exciting projects that we're working on, either with Wells Fargo or CDP?
Sure. Well, actually, two or three really jump out at me, and so let me touch on something that Linda was talking about when she was talking about making repurposing space, for example, with churches and in the faith community. A project that we just have finally closed on in Riverside is the St. Michael's project with CDP, between CDP and Mercy House, and that's a combination. I believe it's 50% very low income for families, and the other 50% for permanent supportive housing. So those that are severely disabled and been on the streets for some time. I'm excited about that one for a couple of reasons, and in all honesty, it tends to be kind of personal. I'm from Riverside. That's my hometown. Love coming back to my hometown and doing well, doing something good. That's a big deal for me. But also on a very serious note, and I know throughout these Zoomcasts, we've talked a lot about faith, and some of it has been, we've been all over the spectrum, ideologically speaking, when it comes to that. But I know for me, as an Episcopalian, this is a big deal. This is a reflection of my faith. My faith has no meaning, is not relevant at all if we are not taking care of the here and now. And so this is a big deal for me, and to be able to do this within my faith community is personally very gratifying. But another thing too is, and we've made a couple of jokes at my mom's expense, and so I'm going to pile on here. But there's a project where we are in partnership with Wells Fargo as well as CDP. It's when it used to be called the Tiny Tim. There was an old shopping center in Santa Ana. And not only are we addressing the housing need for families, but there has been this investment, particularly by Wells Fargo, in sort of providing coaching and counseling and investments and upgrades in some small privately held businesses, right? They were right in that shopping center. I mean, that's a big deal. According to the city council, there has not been capital investment in that neighborhood in decades. And so for us to be able to come in and do that, and for these folks who had their small businesses there, and I know how hard it is to run your own company. I know how hard it is to have these private businesses. Man, some of your profit margin is wafer thin. It's 1%, 2% sometimes. And so for us to be able to come in and create a better environment, an environment where these businesses can be more successful, where they can be more profitable without raising their rents, without doing damage to them. That's exciting, because now we're really talking about some structural justice there, right? We're not just talking about meeting a charitable need, but we're talking fundamentally about economic transformation and neighborhood transformation. And it's hard not to get excited about that.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. I mean, I know, just like I said, from talking to you, how much this really is within the core of who you are. And I really think that is the core of who Mercy House is. And I think everyone who works here. We have some employees on the call. I think they would share that sentiment too. So, Linda, on that note, I kind of want to take it to you and ask, obviously Wells Fargo has a desire to help impact the communities. Can you talk a little about what draws you personally to this work, or you can also talk about Wells Fargo, on the whole, but talk a little about what drew you to this type of work and caring about these issues.
Yeah. So I think the thing, it's a very personal thing, like Larry mentioned. I think for many of us, the work that we do, especially in the social sector, we're driven a lot by our own personal values. So I myself have known of the issue of housing even where I grew up, moved around multiple times, lived in different public housing developments before in different parts of the country. So the idea of housing stability and its importance has always been in the forefront and always on my mind. So it's always been something that I've worked toward. And even seeing that more so when beyond my own lived experience, it's seeing it through the eyes of children, and specifically through students who I taught in South LA. So in the city of Los Angeles itself, it operates 14 public housing sites, and 6 of them are concentrated in South Los Angeles. And at the school that I was teaching, we got students from 3 of these public housing sites. And one of them is the largest public housing site west of the Mississippi. So we have another one that's larger, and that's out in New York, but that's pretty significant. And seeing that the importance of access to housing on these students' ability to just simply live, but also learn and grow and thrive is so important. So that has always been a particular area of interest to me. And even later on, going into working for the Housing Authority and working on some initiatives around intergenerational poverty, and going back to those same communities and looking at how can we build on this notion of community development, and what supportive services, like Larry mentioned, can we bring in to support these individuals and families. And for me, at the end of the day, seeing so much of that work from my work in the public sector, social sector, and now even in philanthropy, it's really, I really do believe it's a human right. And what Wells Fargo is doing is really the right thing to do for our communities. As I think we all know that there is this complexity of the way in which institutions and systemic actions over many decades have, in a sense, contributed to this, even if it sought to tame or address the issue. So being in this role in philanthropy and being able to support various efforts and initiatives, and working with incredible partners like Mercy House and CDP on what can we really do to support our community, not only those experiencing it, but to build that understanding and sense of community and belonging, is really a larger and broader issue that I think we, in a way, are all touching on and embarking on in our work respectively, but we know that there's collective action there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Linda. It really does seem like it's a personal issue for really most people. I mean, if I'm being totally transparent, most people, probably including myself, are only a paycheck away from, paycheck or 2 away from themselves being at risk of losing housing. And so, I understand that this is such a personal thing. But Kyle, to kind of go on, in that same theme, you're obviously a for-profit business as well, like Wells Fargo, but a little different from the nonprofit sector that we're in. What caused you and your brother to go into affordable housing? I mean, you could have built, fancy townhomes somewhere, I'm sure. So what brought you to this work?
Well, I do want to say we are a certified B corporation. So while we are a for-profit, we are a certified B Corp. So it does at least give us the little feather in our cap that, we are honestly trying to, focus on our mission and make decisions based on a mission focus. Although I'd say we're nimble. We're a for-profit, so we're nimble. But we do have a mission. So I will lay that out there because I think it's important. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think affordable housing, I didn't seek out affordable housing. I think it kind of found us. It happened. We had market rate development backgrounds. I had ended up, in the downturn doing some property management of affordable housing. I sat next to our head of affordable housing and a market rate developer I used to work with when I first started. And so it all kind of happened to us, I think. And then we got into the space and realized like all the things that we enjoy in our normal lives, like food, art, housing, because we've been in real estate, our family's been in real estate for a while. It all kind of, you can do it all in this space. And selfishly, I think it's rewarding. So from a personal standpoint, it's like we started doing the work and then we realized, wow, this is awesome work. And it's fun. You partner with a lot of different people. You have to wear a bunch of different hats. It's always keeps you on your toes. It's constantly changing. And at the end of the day, you're doing something great. And like you're seeing the impact on your own community that you live in and how it's helping clean up streets, how it's improving the lives of people who are in your community. And I think those weren't things we sought out. They happened. And then we were like, the reward of that was so great that we're like, oh, this is awesome. Let's keep doing this. Let's do more. Let's do more creative stuff. Let's find better partners. Let's find people who like are passionate about creating something that's not just an apartment unit, that is a community. And so we get to bring in, great people like Brian Peterson from Faces of Santa Ana and Damon. We get to work with those folks. We get to work with the Ecology Center and they help us set up our community gardens. We get to work with, kitchen operators who really care about food and providing food as a resource to those who don't have access to it. Service providers like Mercy House. It's just, you're like, this is so fun. It's enjoyable. And so I think that we didn't seek it out, but now as we've developed this company over the last 10 years, it's just everything we've done has been so rewarding to see that it makes us and drives us to continue to do it. So I think that's, it's kind of how we got into it and why we like it so much.
Yeah. And to attest to Kyle, your desire to see these aesthetically pleasing, dignified housing projects. I myself, and I think I shared this at the last Zoomcast, was a case manager at the Orchard, which was I think one of our first collaborations with CDP. And I was actually able to be on site when Brian Peterson and Damon were out there painting and just doing their thing. And I mean, it really is on par with I think anything that folks who are looking for fair market housing are. I mean, it's some of these places are nicer than where I live. And so I would be happy to live there. And so again, thank you for really sharing that. And Larry, I want to come to you in just a second, but I did want to go back to some stuff that Linda was saying earlier about, obviously, Linda, I hear your passion in talking about both things on the policy end of homeless services, on the individual end, and really everything in between. So Linda, could you talk to us a little about what trends in homeless services do you find most compelling or exciting?
I think I'm going to connect the two in terms of housing and homelessness. And the thing that I find really exciting, seeing it from the work through our partners and a number of organizations and conversations, is first the idea of just looking at the built environment and how it addresses more of the community aspect of it. And when I say that, we're talking about, let's say, looking at this concept of micro units and the building of those micro units. It's not just the units themselves, but what is going to be incorporated within that community to provide support for those who are residing there. So it's bringing in a lot of in addition to the residential services, if it's, for those who are chronically homeless, to things that are even leveraged and used by the broader community, because affordable housing developments are now being seen as not just for those residing there, further kind of facilitating this thought or notion that there is this like dichotomy in communities where it's for those people, but that the idea of housing is intended for the impact on the community, not a particular community. So I find that particularly exciting, and looking at that and just seeing more of this, the concept of, the collaboration of it. And what are those rich resources that we can bring in? And an approach to that has been looking at this concept of placemaking, and how can placemaking play a critical role in the process of developing housing, because of this idea of looking at who are the existing residents and what's existing around it, and how can we incorporate those elements into the work, whether it's the beginning stages of it, such as the outreach component, all the way through to even when the development is done, how does this resonate with the community and is inclusive of what it is that community needs and wants and will eventually embrace, or we would want them to embrace. So those are the couple of things that come to mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, there is just so much happening in the realm of addressing housing insecurity. And so kind of on that note, Larry, as we're wrapping up here, also one more plug for the Q&A. If you have any questions that come up, just drop a line in the chat about what you'd like us to address, and we'll get to it. But going back to the what's next question, Larry, what do you see as next on the horizon for ending homelessness, building housing? Talk to us about what excites you about what's on the horizon.
Well, on this note, I think I tend to maybe part ways with certain voices and certain colleagues. We're always looking for the new thing. We're always looking for the silver bullet. We're always looking for this new shiny object that's going to be this new thing that's going to end homelessness. No, we know what works. We know how to do this. You know, there is no silver bullet. You know what there is? Hard work. That's it. There's the hard work and the commitment, the moral, political, economic commitment of creating housing, not some new gimmick. There's a place. In the housing stock that's out there, there's a place for all ideas, and new ideas are great. But usually those new ideas nibble at the edges of where the real need is. There is no shortcut. The shortcut is to do the darn hard work. And yes, it will take time, and yes, it will be expensive. But you know what? Had we started this decades ago, when some of us were advocating for it, we'd be done, right? You know, when your room is a mess, I have teenage daughters. And sometimes there just is no shortcuts. Sometimes you just have to clean your damn room. I mean, sometimes you just have to do hard work. And when it comes to this, the next thing is more housing, more housing, more housing. That's the answer. It's, we could use any metaphor you want. We could use a sports metaphor. It's blocking and tackling. It's defense and rebounding. It's pitching and hitting. It's whatever it is. But that's the thing. But here's the exciting part. Here's the exciting part. We know it works. We know it works because year to year, even the most difficult cases who come into our housing programs, such as the Orchard, such as what St. Michael's will look like, and Casa Carencia and so forth, we know that somewhere between 94 to 95% of those people who are there July 1 will be there June 30th. That's what we know. We know it works. So we don't need the new shiny thing. We need to roll up our sleeves and work.
Yeah. Larry, I can't imagine that your mom being on this call ever would have thought that you as a child would be preaching to us about cleaning your room, but she loves that. And then, just to kind of reiterate what you said about more housing. Kyle, I kind of want to go and end this with you about obviously what's next, and obviously the answer being more housing, which is good because that's what you all do. What are some of the projects that we have coming online either together or even just that CDP is doing that you'd love to share about?
God, there's literally so much. I mean, I think to take on what Larry was saying, like, yeah, more housing, right? For us, it's let's do it better. Like, right, let's learn from every deal is complicated. There's always something that you could fix or do better. And I think it's just, let's do it again. Let's do it better, you know? And the good thing now is that there's this tide turning, I think, from public sentiment of affordable housing where it's shifted to like, yeah, we have to do this. You know, the homelessness problem has become so pervasive and obvious to the common person walking down the street that now all of a sudden people are like, yeah, you need to do this. And so that's super helpful. And in terms of trying to get new projects done. And so now we're like, let's push that forward. Let's ride that wave and keep pushing forward more housing, with more services and, better designs, more functional, more support as much as we can, more funding, right? I mean, it sounds like we're greedy, but we're not. It's just, you need all that to make these viable, right? And so that tide is turning. And so it's great. And it's been really positive. New projects. We have a project in Santa Ana that's a good example. It's almost a mix of we did the Aqua called now Casa Corintia with Mercy House and Larry and Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim's a family project, higher AMI levels, affordability levels, working families. We've got retail component there. So it's a really cool project, really dynamic. And then we've got Aqua, which is really like permanent supportive housing, right? 100%. Everyone is homeless, chronically homeless, very intensive needs of case management. And then now we have this new project in Santa Ana called Westview House, which is basically a mix. It's 26 of the 85 units are permanent supportive housing, those with severe mental illness. We have rental assistance. We have services from the county through the county, the healthcare agency. So we're really leveraging different resources. And then we're doing family housing as well. So we're taking the two populations and mixing them, which I think is going to happen more. And I think it's a good approach. I mean, it really is reflective of not just one type of population from the community, but a mix of really what the community looks like, right? We have people who need support. We have working families. We're combining those and we're trying to build within our project a community that's reflective really of the true community in Santa Ana. And so I think it's a good approach. And it also allows us to not have to say, okay, we're doing one project like this, one like this. It's like we can serve all these population types and partner with every group that serves both those who have severe mental illness, those chronically homeless, those working families, bring them all to the same place and really make a dynamic community. And I think that's super exciting for us. And so we're waiting for our final award of funding there, and that is coming up. We got a point score letter. We're feeling very good about it. So we're hoping that will come to fruition here very soon. And that's the last piece. I said that the other project, I'll take a little more of everyone's time, is that I'm excited about is the second B site in Oxnard.
Yeah,
it is. We're taking a shelter on the ground floor and then permanent supportive housing above. And I haven't seen a project do that before, so it's scary. But it is example of like how Mercy House and us work together. It's like, let's get creative. Let's find a place. It's an intake navigation center, really. Intake, and let's provide the housing there too. And it's a city-owned site, so it's great because the city is funding it, the county is funding it. It's an asset, and we're taking that asset and utilizing it to the best possible ability. Providing a navigation center and shelter that is needed. They need to replace the current one that Mercy House is operating, and then also saying like, let's not stop there. Let's provide housing. Let's make this a full service. Let's make sure this end result of housing folks can happen at the same place on really, I think it's a 28,000 square foot site. I mean, this is a super tiny site where we have 56 units of permanent supportive housing. We have 110 beds for shelter. I mean, that's, as I say it, I'm like, that sounds crazy, but it's like, it's in downtown Oxnard. I mean, we are doing it and we're getting everyone's support and buy-in on it. And it's really exciting. So, I mean, that's an exciting project.
I want to jump in on that because that's exactly why I was raising my hand to talk about that one. And one note, in addition to what Kyle is talking about, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the city of Oxnard, and in particular, their city manager, Alex Nguyen, who is really a visionary and is really doing this for all the right reasons. What is really cool about the project that Kyle was just talking about is, in our 30-year history, more often than not, when a city wants to work with us and give us a piece of property for either this really cool shelter or a housing project, guess where it is? the furthest outskirts of town as humanly possible, right? What's so interesting and so cool about this project, it is literally across the street from City Hall, and that's by design. It is intentionally inclusive within the overall community because Mercy House and CDP and the city of Oxnard are making a broader moral statement that you are a part of this community. You are valued, you are human, you are a member of this community just like everyone else. And that's unusual. And that hits on a lot of high notes for me.
I'd say the pressure's on, right? So like,
yeah,
like
we can't
we are front and center. We can't hide. So we have to go over that.
Don't look down.
But it makes it fun, you know, and it's exciting, and it's great to see the city really buying into it and saying, all right, we're with you. It's like, great, let's do this.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to transition this to some Q&A. So we got some questions coming in. It's not too late to send a question if you'd like, but I kind of want to just jump in here on the first question. So this is broad, and this could be for anyone. So if you feel like this, you can speak to this, just jump in. But what do you feel like the biggest challenge facing, nonprofits or for-profits doing this work is?
Cash flow, 100%. No, straight up cash flow. From a budget perspective, I'll just speak to Mercy House, and I think I'm speaking a universal language for a lot of my more esteemed colleagues as well. Budget-wise, we make sense. The problem is, though, and there's a lot of public investment, both on the state level and a federal level, and I'm excited by that. The problem is, though, it's all on a reimbursement basis. And so what's happening is we have Mercy House and other good providers going, gosh, I don't know if I could take on that good work because it could be 30 days to 150 days before we ever get paid. You know, we're operating in one city right now where they're a year behind paying us. But the good work still has to continue. Now, from a budget perspective, we're solid. But if we could solve this cash flow issue, if we could solve this through a third-party source, whether it's a loan or and it can be a loan, it should be a loan. If we could get financial institutions to look at, for example, our grant receivables as legitimate collateral as opposed to just a property asset, well, guys, that's a game changer. We could make an enormous dent in homelessness, but that is the one thing that's preventing us from really exploding. And I realize the silliness of my saying that, given how much we've grown, but we could really go to a whole new level if we could solve that one riddle.
That's good. Kyle, Linda, any other challenges y'all experience?
I mean, I think, funding, right? It's money. It's cost, right? I mean, we can dream up awesome projects and have everything covered, but you have to find the money for it. And it's the timing of that money coming in that makes these projects so hard to get done, because you have to take on all the risk, of the project, of buying the land, tying it up, spending the front end costs, just praying that you get the funding that you need, and that the project can actually go forward. And then to Larry's point on the back end, you've got you've got to operate this in perpetuity, and you need to come up with that money to do it. And when you've got rents that are, very, very low, you can't support normal operations in a property. And so you're looking constantly for money. You're trying to find it all the time. And so it makes it tough. I mean, having good partners, having cities committed, and, knowing that they're in with you is the way you get comfortable with taking on all that risk. But yeah, the funding is always a tough part, for certain.
No, I hear that. And I hear that because I'm very much a part of these conversations that we're kind of sweating a little bit sometimes, never too much. So another question that we got in was, and I actually love this because this is like something that I harp on all the time, the question reads, I didn't realize Mercy House was into permanent housing. Is there a difference with what Mercy House does compared to what Habitat for Humanity does? Larry, I guess I'll kick this one to you. Can you talk a little about permanent housing? And also, I'm going to actually add on to this question too. Can you also explain the difference between permanent housing and permanent supportive housing while you're at it?
Okay, so I think there's 4 questions there. I'm going to do my best to run really quickly. So first off, not knowing that Mercy House does permanent housing, I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse. It's a curse because, oh my God, are you kidding me? But it's also a blessing because we've been so successful in expanding in the shelter sphere of things. And so I do, and that's not how we started. And so I do get that. But the irony is that I think we may be, if not the one of the largest permanent supportive housing providers in all of Orange County, and kind of a major player in all of this, you know, alongside our partners. So the difference between us and say Habitat, for example, now Habitat's model historically, and I know there are some variations to this, tends to be they work with an individual family, and the family will put in, or the household will put in sweat equity, and then Habitat tends to walk away, and so then it is something that is sometimes held by the family, sometimes it's still held by Habitat, but that is a very singular approach. And generally speaking, the target audience is going to be for folks who can in fact do that. What we're talking about, and this will blend nicely into the difference between permanent housing and permanent supportive housing. So one, the difference of what we're doing, a lot of it is scale, right? A lot of it is it's scale, who's in an ownership position, and who are the clientele that we're serving. Now at Mercy House, as I said in my opening comments, we serve everybody. We serve families. I think we're the largest housing provider for families in Orange County, if I'm not mistaken. I think our shelters have more housing placements than anyone else. A little known fact. We serve single adults. We serve those who are financially, you know, easily more self-sufficient, all the way, as I said, to those that are extremely vulnerable. So, you know, when it gets to the difference of permanent housing with supportive services and permanent supportive housing, well, a lot of it has to do with who the client is and the intensity of the services. So straightforward permanent housing that's either affordable or low income or very low income or extremely low income, and all of those words actually mean something based on a formula. Typically speaking, you'll have somebody who's there who will need, say, you know, this much of support, right? They'll need some ongoing case management support to make sure that they are able to maintain their housing. Folks, when we talk about permanent supportive housing, you know, let's just reference Casa Querencia or the Orchard. We have folks moving into those housing units that have spent 20, 25 years living on the streets, haven't paid rent maybe ever in their entire life, are severely mentally ill, combined with addictions, combined with a physical disability. And so the level of severity and the level of support is extraordinarily different. You know, the folks that we're serving, especially Mercy House, and with the partnership with the panel that we have here, really what we're able to do is we're able to house people that years ago we used to just give up on. People that we would see in the 7-Eleven parking lots, you know, people living under bridges, sleeping on a park bench, and we thought there was not an answer. Well, when we talk about Casa Querencia, when we talk about the Orchard, when we talk about the programs that we've done with Wells Fargo and with CDP, we're actually finding an answer for those folks. And that's permanent supportive housing.
Thank you, Larry. I know that was a huge question with a million different facets. So we're up against the clock here, and I did want to still have that small portion at the end to give my little intro to help them home. But we did get one. We actually got 2 questions, and one we're not going to get to because I promise you it'll take forever. But email us, please. But Linda, one of the questions in here was about a term you used called micro unit. Can you just briefly explain to us what you meant by that term?
Yeah, so for my understanding, I know the city, an example of a city that approved it through their council is the city of Long Beach. And it really is about the size of the unit in developments because there typically before have been standards to the size of it. So it's modifying that concept. So.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, I'm going to take a second just to let you know about how this fits into this broader campaign that we're doing. So everything you heard today about housing development and partnerships and all that kind of stuff, it's only possible in large part due to donations and support that we receive from either private individuals or companies or churches or community groups. And one of the cool things that we're doing that's coming up here in 2 weeks now is called Help Them Home. And it's a 24-hour giving day that we're doing with I think like 19 other nonprofits here in Orange County. So it's a big collaborative effort with really everyone who's doing the work to end homelessness here. And we're really, really excited. Overall, we're going to raise $1 million between the 19 organizations, and Mercy House is going to raise $50,000 of that. So a little ambitious for us. It's more than we've raised in the past, but we feel like, making this commitment and really helping bring people in to support Mercy House is really what's going to make the difference. When Larry talks about cash flow, that's not an issue when we get private donations. So again, as you're thinking about how you can get involved, we have ways that you can volunteer. We have ways that you can donate in-kind donations. But really one of the big things is going to be helping support this campaign that we have. And there's obviously, we want everyone, if possible, to donate. That's definitely something we would love to see people do. But even more than that, we'd love for you to tell your friends about the work that Mercy House is doing. And we're going to send a recap email to everyone on this call and everyone who signed up, and let them know about how you can actually make a page and share that page to your network. And hopefully just expand the reach and expand the exposure that Mercy House has. And tell you can text the link out, you can share on Facebook or Instagram, you can, you can go old school and just tell someone over the phone. But however you do it, we just want to let the folks on this call know that you can support even if you can't write a big check, or if you can't get out and build a 71 unit complex tomorrow. There's still ways that everyone here can help. So please look for that email. And again, thank you for joining our call. We're really excited. And last pitch, don't miss next week. It's going to be our last installment in this series that we're doing. And we have Ray Bucati, who's the vice chair of our board. He's going to be, him and I are going to be having a conversation and bringing Father Jerome, our founder, into it. I think Ray's on this call. And so if you can, it's 11 a.m. next Wednesday. Please mark your calendars, send us an email, look for the link. And thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our panel of speakers. Again, fantastic stuff, guys.